And press the record button. We're recording. Tom, take it away, sir.
In 6 days from recording from now, the Ashtabula Area City Schools School Board will have their election live, as a bunch of other things are going to be voted on in the state of Ohio and in the county. We have had Darius Williams on, and now we are proud to introduce Sam Torres, another candidate for the Ashtabula Area City School Board, here to talk about his platform, what changes he wants to enact, and what he wants to see from the Ashtabula Area City Schools going forward from not only him, but the people that are hopefully coming in with him. So, Sam, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us,
Welcome,
sir.
Sam.
Absolutely, gentlemen.
Appreciate you
I'm
being here.
excited to be here. Boy, it's an
early morning.
Gorgeous in here, though.
It's an early morning.
And
yeah,
it's early.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an early morning, but we're on it.
Yeah, I only do things important this early. So airports and the cut.
Airport. Hey, I'll take it. I'll be proud to be on that list. So Sam, you are running for the school board. You're picking up hopefully there's 3 seats available.
Yeah.
But you're only running for one, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about that. So first of all, what got you interested in even running in the first place?
So, one of the things is I've been really involved in the community for probably the last 3 to 4 years, particularly with the high school, but, kind of with the community as a whole. Sports obviously is my passion. So, they say if you're going to make a change, do it in something you care about, right?
Right.
So sports was my thing. Thanks to this guy as well, as he started this journey with me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? 3-4 years ago now, believe it or not. But so with all that going on, I'm really getting involved with the kids, seeing some of the things that are going on. I'm a father of 3. You know what I mean? So education and the schools in this area has always been very important to me. Well, about 3 years ago, so for me, like the school board has always had kind of this weird mystique to it. You know what I mean? It was like this untangible thing. You never could see anything that was going on. Even going back to, I'm a 2005 graduate. You just assume that's where the big boys and the adults were talking. So I never really paid too much attention to that until about 3.5 years ago. A really unfortunate event kind of comes forward in Ashtabula Area City Schools where it was uncovered that students had suffered abuse while in the district, and we're not talking 1 or 2. We're talking about a dozen. More of the group than I wish was the fact were close friends of mine, were people that I knew. So it was an eye-opening experience. And at that time, there was a board member that was, had these accusations laid against them. And at that point I joined I guess you'd call it like an advocacy group.
Yeah.
To kind of make sure that this was going to be handled properly, because you guys know that a lot of times when these things are happening, and we've seen a whole culture shift, right? Sometimes these things tend to get swept under the rug. Well, you don't want to see that. Not for people you care about.
Right.
So, being fully transparent, being fully honest, that's what started bringing me to these school board meetings. I wanted to see how they were going to handle these things. I wanted to see, really what was going on behind the green door. You know what I mean? So I started going to these things, and that's where I start seeing kind of how the school district works and all these things that they're passing. And you want to talk about, honest to God, the most important position in a community is your school board. City council does a great job. We've got a city manager, we've got commissioners, and all of those jobs are great, and they do a great job. They are massively important for you and your everyday. And the other thing I tell people is, we go out and we vote for senators, and we go out and we vote for presidents and governors and all these people that, honest to God, will have no bearing on what your day-to-day is. But these local elections, and I've always known that, play a huge part. Well, when I started hanging around these school board meetings and watching what they were doing and all the money that gets passed and all the agendas and that sort of thing, that's really what let me know, like, no, this, if you want to make change in a school district, in a community, this is where you start. This is where it has to be.
Right.
So, I start attending these meetings, I start seeing what's going on. And now, granted, these last 3.5 years have been far from what they would call the norm. Like the OSBA does not say that this is how board meetings should go. But I think anytime you have conflict and anytime you have change, there's going to be some chaos, right? So that's kind of what it is.
So you're here to make change.
Yes.
Now, can you extrapolate that a little bit? You said the OSBA says this isn't how boards or meetings are supposed to go.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So the Ohio School Board Association is kind of like the overseeing body,
Right.
of school boards. And another thing a lot of people don't know is while the OSBA offers guidance, there are no laws on the books really. That, I mean, they follow Robert's laws, so let me clarify that. But there are really no laws on the book outside of a board member committing a felony or catching a charge that can remove a board member. So when you're up there, this is another reason why it's so important on who you're voting for, because when they're there, they are not leaving. Like, unless they want to leave,
Right.
a board can't kick them off. Now, you can go through a very complicated process of a recall, but I'm 37,
But you would have to have a petition and signings, and then they would have to vote on it.
yeah.
Correct? Like
Yeah.
the public would vote on it.
Yeah, and again, have you ever heard a recall in your life?
Well, not on a
haven't.
school board. No, not on a school board. I've heard
Yeah,
recalls
not
for
on a
other
school
things, but yeah, for a school board, I can't say I've ever, especially locally here.
Yeah, that's
So-
the amount of participation that is required, right? For a recall is put it this way, more participation than we get at the polls.
It's an extensive process. It's an
So-
extensive process.
So yeah, so that's why this position in particular is so important, because you're one fifth. You're part of a group of five. And now, granted, three, Darius said this correct. 3 is the magic number.
Right.
No matter
Well,
what
you have
goes
to have a
on.
majority.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you can get that magic number 3, not that the other two people's opinion doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, 3 is where it's going to be.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I think that 3. Yeah, so I definitely agree. To hold the majority, but it's not like the same 3 people will be for the same thing every single time, because everybody has different points of view.
yeah, and that's such a great. I'm so glad you said that, because, excuse me, that's a huge portion of one of the reasons I'm running as well. So when you elect 5 people to serve on a board of a school, right? Ideally, you want 5 individual thought processes, reasons to vote, those sort of things. You want kind of this holistic look, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be kind of like, a thumbprint or a thumb on the community is supposed to be this board of education. So if you have 5 board members that consistently vote the exact same way every time, and there's no back and forth, and it's and you get into that, well, let's just do it to avoid conflict, and we want to seem united and that sort of thing. Do you have a board, or do you have one?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I was gonna make that point. So
Yeah.
if they're all voting the same way, what is the point of having the 5 individual, right?
Exactly.
Like the whole point of having multiple people making a decision is that way tough conversations can be had, and then there's going to be a small majority maybe
Yeah.
that kind of pushes things forward.
Yeah, and your ultimate hope is that even in disagreement, that you have taken in every aspect of the issues that are being presented.
Right.
So, because even if I disagree, and this is just my personal, kind of thoughts on things. Even if I disagree with something that is being said or something that is being, brought to the table, or, you know what I mean? As long as I have all of the information, and I was able to, get my voice heard, and I've done my portion, as God willing, I get elected, right? As long as I've got all the information, then I feel like I have fulfilled my duty to those who have entrusted me with their vote. Because ultimately, like, and that's another thing, like, we got to talk about the amount of trust you're putting in somebody when you put a little circle on a piece of paper. It's saying that I trust you to work for my kids, to work for this district.
Mhm.
So I take that very seriously. And I don't know, I'm not saying anybody hasn't, but I know that my trust hasn't felt, I don't feel that my trust has been fulfilled. You know what I mean? By the people who I voted for. And there are two types of people in the world. You can sit back and you can complain about it, or you can get in there.
Right.
And I've done a lot of research. I've attended these board meetings, and I've, gone to the OSBA, and I've started looking through these things and looking through Robert's laws, and, checking these things that they're supposed to kind of follow through, and seeing what actual power a board actually has, and what their actual, more than power, what their role is in the success of a district. And that's one of the, like, I got to get in there. I think that the kids and the families of this district deserve an advocate. And, my by trade, I'm a nurse, right? So I'm an advocate for my patients every day. Um, you know, it's just something that I think it's just kind of an inherent part of me. Anybody who needs the help, if they need that help, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make sure they have that.
Fair.
Yeah,
Fair.
absolutely. And so going off of that, like being someone that someone can come to, someone can trust, that kind of thing. I mean, we need to draw a line in the sand. That doesn't mean that, how do I say this? You don't want people to be a yes man for you, correct?
Absolutely.
So when Darius was on here, he was talking like, hey, vote Williams, Torres, Fleming.
Yeah.
Right? And that's like that's your guys' platform. You guys want to run together. Hopefully you guys want to get in together. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you guys work well together. You
Mm-hmm.
guys have a united goal. You
Yes.
guys have a united vision, right?
Yes. Yes.
But that doesn't mean, and I think that some people might take that and be like, oh, well, just because Sam says something, then Mr. Fleming's going to agree implicitly.
Absolutely.
But that's not what you want, correct? You don't want a yes man. You
No.
want someone that can, like you said, come on there, give you maybe a different point of view that he has, and then, hey, change my mind. Like there's that meme on the internet, like this, change my mind.
Yeah.
Right?
The guy with the mug.
The guy with the mug, yeah.
That's
So-
Steven Crowder.
yeah. So the thing is you guys aren't running together like on a united platform, essentially, just so that all three, it's all at one time. It's so that you guys can work together and have that united goal. But also, hey, Sam, you said this, and I'm speaking as Mr. Fleming here. I don't necessarily agree. Change my mind.
You're right.
So just to have not necessarily yes men for each other, but have a sense of cohesion, because you guys actually know how to talk to each other. You guys actually know how to resolve things together. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. So I think that needed to be quantified, because sometimes I think when people listen to a podcast and they're like, "Oh, well, vote for the three of us," it's like, okay, well, really, I'm just voting for one person at that point.
So
You
let
know
me
what I mean?
so let me follow up on that.
Let me just, I just
Sure.
want to jump with Tom there, because I think with Tom, and I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you,
go
but I
ahead.
think really you hit on something that was so important there. When, one of the things I struggled with, I'm sure Tim did, and I'm sure Darius did as well, is you don't want to get into the business of telling people who to vote for other than yourself. But we got to a position through, there's constant communication. Like, I talk to these guys regularly, and we talk about things that need to change, and we don't agree on everything. Like, we just don't.
Yeah.
But like you said, one thing that we can do is we can talk, and we can get our thoughts out on the table, and we can create discussion. And I believe that's the best way to actually come to a conclusion of anything. So, when people may have personal vendettas, they may have personal agendas against certain people. Tim is a guy that really elicits a response. I'll say that much. I will tell you that I think a lot more times than not, people pay attention to his method more than his message, which is a shame because his message is on point. And that's one of those things that even, through talking to him regularly, I had to kind of take myself back, listen to what he was saying, and we can communicate well. Darius is the same deal. You know what I mean? I don't agree with everything he says. He doesn't agree with everything I say. But at the end of the day, we're going to listen to each other, and most importantly, we're going to respect each other.
So let me follow up on what Tom was saying also. Um, so as far as everybody, the three of you, like, basically your message as far as running together is because you guys know how to talk to each other, have a conversation, come to a conclusion, whether you agree or disagree.
Absolutely.
So is there? I haven't been to any board meetings. I'm sure you've been to several.
Yeah.
Is there no discussion being had, or is
So
everybody basically kind of, when the vote comes, they basically all know which way they should vote?
yeah, so there are different types of board meetings that they have. There's a public one that everybody's entitled to go to. Those are the ones that I've been regularly attending since like October of 21.
Right.
And then they have executive sessions. They have different board meetings where they're discussing different topics. Usually legal stuff is talked about in the background. Big time changes to the district. Obviously, when they had a school board member vacate their seat. Those were some discussions they had to have behind closed doors to get candidates. We just had a new superintendent hired, those sort of things. All those discussions happen behind closed doors amongst the board members. Again, these are the people that you have trusted to discuss these things and always make the best decision for the district. So the public portion is usually a list of things that have been brought to the table, and those things can be brought to the table by the superintendent. They discuss correspondence from the public. Those sort of things. They will, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll kind of tidy up stuff from the last meeting and then incorporate new stuff. So there's a way to discuss and there's a way to listen to each other. And they don't always do that. So what I've seen and what the pattern is in these board meetings is Tim wants to make sure that certain things are discussed and brought to the table. And I think you guys have all heard, like I have heard about, all these inside clubs and these things that happen, right? And these people that are kind of working amongst each other in like a shadow, right?
Right.
And when Tim sees that stuff, it raises a red flag and he wants it discussed.
Yeah.
And that is the only time Tim is the only person I have ever seen gavelled. He's the only person I've ever seen censured, which we'll get to that here whenever you're ready, because that's a whole another thing that I completely disagree with. I think it was a weaponized tool. But they listen to everybody except one, and I can't sign on to that. I don't care what your opinion is. I want to hear it. Like, and one of the things I've posted on Facebook a couple times as well. When you are a public official, and that's what you are as a school board member, you are an elected public official. You have no right to censor anybody's thoughts on you. You have no right to censor anybody's thoughts on the work you're doing. You can't block people because you don't like what they have to say. Like these are the things that you kind of gave up, right? When you got your petition, you're a wide open book and they're allowed to come at you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you live in a world where nobody is disagreeing with anything you have to say, and you're living in a world where nothing makes you feel uncomfortable, you aren't making progress at all.
I agree.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I mean, being criticized, being scrutinized whenever you're a public, I mean, that just comes with the territory. You know what I mean? And I think you said it best. If you live in fear, if you live in a world where no one disagrees with you, you're not going to move forward. But I mean, in a school board, the the point of a school district, the point of any type of educational setting isn't to remain stagnant. It's to progress, right? So we've progressed in the wrong direction, our school district, because I think Darius said it, when we were in high school, we were a D,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're an F. So there was a progression, but it was in the wrong way,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. So,
And I want to ask something about that when you finish your point.
yeah, because I just want to clarify something really quickly, and then I'm going to jump right back to you, Tom. Um, we have been a D once in the history of Lakeside.
Oh,
We have been a school. This is 23. It started in '01, so 22 years.
22 years.
So we have failed at a state level. We have failed. And when I say fail, I mean we have failed to meet a state standard. We have failed to meet a state minimum, I guess is a more poignant term on that, right? For 21 of 22 years, we got a singular D in 21 years. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Fantastic. So as one is wont to do, I scroll through Facebook, and I read things that people say, and these people, these men and women, they're not on the school board.
Sure.
They're members maybe of the community. Maybe they have a son or daughter in sports. You know what I mean? And this individual posted that our school district could be in danger of being shut down if we don't improve. So how common is that? How common is it that a school district gets shut down from failing?
So, I don't know. I don't know how common it is that they get shut down for failing. Okay, but I do know that after you fail for so long, you have what's called a state takeover.
Okay.
So the Ohio Department of Education comes in and they say, "All right, listen, you guys are failing." Now keep in mind, Tom, we have failed so you figure in 21 years, at least what is that? 5 classes?
Yes.
5 entire high school classes have never seen a state minimum education.
Ah,
If you if you think about that.
Well,
wild.
you're saying like freshman through senior year.
Yeah, so you
5 generations.
So 5 generations of high school students in the current way that we have voted, in the current way that we have run our school. When you think about that, to me, it's insane.
That's mind blowing. That's mind blowing. And so the onus at that point is on the school board to go out there, figure out what's not working, and how to make it better. Correct?
Absolutely. That is your sole and only purpose as a school board member. And one of the things I've heard out in the public, like you have, is kind of like, school. Well, the school board doesn't control your day-to-day activities. That's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. But they control the people
administration
who control your day-to-day activities.
Let me ask you a question. So when some shit hits the fan at a school, obviously goes to the principal. I would presume. And
that's
then
Mr. Weatherholtz at this point.
well,
Yes.
it would depend on the school. It would depend on the school.
Oh yeah, because you
Yeah.
figure there's a different principal.
There's
for
like 7
each of the
schools or
building, which
something.
unfortunately we
Sure.
just shut down another building.
We shut down which building?
I want to say Huron was
So it's not
closed.
being used at all?
Yeah, they moved students in from grades into kind of like condensing because financially Lakeside's had a bleeding wound that has just continued to go.
Wow. All right, so we'll get there. All right, so just for me to finish off. So principal in charge of the schools, and then of course the principals report to superintendent. Superintendent reports to the board.
The board, yes.
So all right, so I guess if there is an issue where a day-to-day operations is failing and the principal can't do anything about it, and the superintendent can't do anything about it or neglects to, or whatever the case is, how does an issue get brought up to the board where the board can hold somebody accountable? How does that work?
So the first thing, and I think the most important thing, is that the issue gets brought to the board.
Mhm.
So we talk about accessibility, we talk about transparency, we talk about the comfortability of the public to go to a board member and know that everything they say is going to be heard. Not, you don't have to censor what you're saying to them.
So who's saying it? So are you saying it from the public, or are you saying it from the teachers, from the principal?
So it
From
can come from all of them.
okay,
So if you're a parent in the district and things aren't going right, obviously you should follow the chain of command, right? So you should talk to your teacher, and when it's not fixed there, then you talk to your principal. And when it is continued to be ignored, then you go to the superintendent. And then when it's continuing to be ignored, then you go to the board. You know what I mean? Like I won't get foul, but the whole water runs downhill, but something else does too.
shit.
So that's kind of how it goes. So by the time it gets to the board, and this is with all things, by the time a complaint reaches the board, it's at critical mass. So it's not time to kind of sit back and hem and haw. Like, no, at that point you need to address it. So, the board has to talk to the superintendent. The board has to, talk to, obviously the principal's not reporting to the board, but, figure out what's going on. And a good superintendent is going to, the moment that you talk to him or her, going to be able to tell you, oh yeah, well, we've done this and this and this and this. Well, okay. What else are you doing? Because we still have an unhappy family. We are underserving our children, which is the biggest crime of all. So that's kind of what it is, but that is not the culture we have right now.
So all right, real quick, just to follow up on that. So if the board is not doing anything about it, then what?
Then you wait for 4 years or 2 years and you elect somebody else.
That's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, and that's where we talked about, recalls and stuff like that. Like, so if you really have a very terrible board and a board members that aren't doing the job, you can do the recall. But in the time it takes you to get a recall kind of done, it's almost election time.
Yeah.
So you're better off just kind of waiting. And I want to say that I hate that it's a fact that we have to wait. And the reason I say this, and we had a Meet the Candidates night last week or 2 weeks ago, right? And one of the things I said there, and I stand by this, and I tell people all the time, I don't have to lie. I don't stutter because I'm not lying. Like, these are things that I truly believe. But one of the things I said is, we are not talking about factory parts. We are not talking about plants. We're talking about children, right? So every moment that we are waiting to progress, right, to get through our plan, is another group of children that has been put to a side. There's another graduating class that just missed it when we were going to get it right, that just missed getting that education that they deserve. And to me, that's why everything you do in a district, everything you do as a school board member, a superintendent, a principal, a teacher, a parapro, a bus driver, a custodian, a lunch lady, anybody who is, creating this environment for your child, if you are not taking that position with, like you're on a timeline, like the room is flooding and you're looking for a door, you're disservicing the child.
Absolutely. I mean, growing up, there was I'm sure you've heard it. You've heard it. I mean, we all have children. They're all in different school districts, but the adage doesn't apply to a school district. It encompasses all children. Children are the future, right?
Absolutely.
They're the future. We need to cultivate that love of learning, that love of community, that love of self. Those are all important things that we need to cultivate, right?
Yeah.
And by not investing in these children and not giving them a D grade, giving them that C, because C's get degrees. I hate to say it.
It's an absolute fact.
It's an absolute fact. But you're essentially, to me, what whomever is in charge is saying is, yeah, children are the future, but I really don't care about the future.
I think that's a fair statement. Like,
you think
it's
that's
okay
a fair
to
statement?
hell yeah. Because I mean, like, you're saying like, oh yeah, you can get away with the bare minimum.
Yeah, and that's
but the bare minimum doesn't get you forward. You said it earlier.
Right.
You said it earlier. If you're always comfortable, if there's never adversity in your way, you're never going to improve, correct? Well, the adversity is being challenged in education, being challenged in sports, being challenged as a human. You might get bullied, you might get made fun of, picked on, but what do you do to reconcile that and go forward? It's going to make you a stronger person, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you didn't get that A in school because your teacher's tough, right? But sometimes, and just from some of the things I've seen, sometimes a teacher can just be a yes man. Oh, okay, well, you're the star quarterback of our football team, and man, we really need that win. If we're Lakeside, we need that win against Geneva.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
Edgewood,
sure.
hey man, the Battle of the Bridge is this weekend, and John over there got a D or got an F on the test, so he's not going to pass.
Let's
You know what I
give him
mean?
a
But we
D.
really need that son of a bitch out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I mean, and I say it with humor, but I mean, just the pure fact of the matter is, if children are our future, wouldn't whomever is in charge be doing everything they could to ensure that future is great?
That's what you would hope, right? That's
Yeah.
that's what you would hope. And I do want to say this. Again, we're all products of this school district, right?
Mhm.
Some
Yeah.
of the greatest teachers I've met, or some of the greatest people I've met in my life, were my teachers.
Mhm.
You know, there's still people that I hold in super high regard, but the teachers, there's a
true.
support issue there. There's an issue of, um, you know, can I fail them? Do I have everything? I'm sure there are teachers out there who are asking themselves, like, am I failing these students? Am I getting them? Am I doing my best? And I truly believe that they are. I think that we have a lot of underserved teachers. We have a bunch of underserved parapros that are not being given the tools, or not being given the support systems that they need to give their best product. And if they're not giving their best product, then we
What
as a
kind of
board are failing the kids.
what tools do you think they need?
So some of the tools that they need, obviously, we have a shortage of parapros. These teachers need to. I need to know that what they are actually lacking. You know what I mean? So anytime somebody fails, right? And this is in any job in the world, right? If somebody is not doing their job, you put them on, improvement plans and stuff like that, which have a negative connotation and all that. But the purpose of that is for the person who is doing the work to be able to tell you, I could do my job better if I had this. And then your job as the person accepting that is to make sure that you can provide. You can either provide it or you don't. And if you can't provide it, then that fit doesn't work. And again, you're not serving that teacher, you're not serving that student. So I have not taught in these schools. All right. And I've never alluded to the fact that I've even taught in these schools. So what these teachers are seeing on a day-to-day basis, what these I've had many parapros come talk to me, and they talk about, behavior is obviously a big issue. And I don't think it's just an issue that affects Ashtabula either.
No, it's not.
I think it's a generational thing right now. I think we have a lot of
Generational, like culture wise.
yeah.
Okay.
I think that we have a lot of very unique home lives. I think there are much more. There are many more issues today for youth than even what we had grown up. And like, I didn't grow up in sunshine and rainbows. You didn't grow up in sunshine and rainbows. I'm sure you had, stuff that you had to go through too. But, you look at kind of all the rest of the stuff that surrounded us, and it was nowhere near this. We didn't have the social medias and stuff like that where
I was gonna ask, does it have to do with social media, instant gratification, just kind of always having other people in your face, and basically anything you see on social media is somebody's highlights. They don't put their information or their pictures or anything out there if they look like they look like trash, or they did something that was bad where they got in trouble or whatever the case is. You're usually seeing somebody's highlights. And somebody told me once, never judge your behind the scenes by somebody's highlights. And I think a lot of kids these days kind of do that. So there's a culture change where from when we were kids, we didn't have that. So, we got to see everybody in school every day. That was it. And you're seeing them for 40 minutes of class, and then you go home, you go to sports, maybe you go hang out on, with your friends afterwards, but it wasn't like a constant and you're seeing, by the way, you're seeing all these people that you're around. You see the behind the scenes. You're not seeing their highlights. You're seeing their everyday life. So maybe it's not such a high challenge or an expectation they don't have such a high expectation to meet, right?
Yeah, but also with that though, so think about all the mistakes we've made in our life.
Right.
Think about every stupid thing you've ever done, right? And thank God MySpace and all that stuff wasn't available until I was an older teenager, and I was pretty much an adult. But imagine the mistakes you made as a 12, 13-year old, an 8 or 9-year old, right? And imagine that is somebody catches that on film, and then you get to relive that every day. Or worse, imagine um, some of those things that you didn't want everybody to know about your family. We talk about drug addiction. We talk about the financial hardships that a lot of family are doing. How broke are you?
Right.
You know what I mean? Imagine everybody knows that about you, because we've got this society that's this open book, and it's like everything to be known is known.
Yeah.
Your mom's a drug addict, your dad is poor, your sister went to jail, your brother's a drug dealer. Like, when we were in school, it was almost like a reprieve from that for a minute, right?
Mhm.
Like so for some people's home lives, that's where they went for, like, this is the only place I can be a kid. This is the only place where I can go and I can just kind of learn, and I can be treated as an individual with worth and value and respect.
You know what else I noticed? I'm gonna call it coddle culture.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's I've noticed a trend over the last decade at least, where if somebody has an issue, we kind of coddle the issue instead of actually facing it head on and maybe telling somebody like, hey, you know, yeah, you got a problem, but guess what? We all do. Kind of suck it up
Yeah.
and keep it moving, and obviously some issues are going to be a little more difficult than others, but I think there was definitely a cultural or societal shift probably a little over a decade ago where we started coddling the people's issues instead of facing them. And then what that does is it makes it a softer society, in my opinion. And where now students can have issues or behavioral issues, and the teachers, instead of disciplining them, they kind of like almost baby them.
Yeah, and so
And let me just finish real quick. And then it's kind of like trickled through the school systems where it's almost frowned upon if you do discipline them.
yeah, and I can see kind of where that comes. So it's the tale of two extremes, right? And the world we grew up in was softer than the world our fathers grew up in, and the one before that, and you go the generations, and there are some things that today we take into account, and they address, and they understand, like mental health. You know what I mean? Nobody had a mental health problem when we were young. That doesn't mean it didn't exist.
Correct. Yeah,
Right?
I agree.
So,
exactly.
but there are approaches to these things, right? So you have to, we talk about IEPs. We've talked about IEPs before we started here, and that's a big passion of mine, and we'll talk about that when you guys are ready too. But the individualized education plan is supposed to kind of take all of these things and encompass them. And if there's a mental health component of it, some kids, you're gonna have to push harder because they have that block. Some kids have a standpoint, and when you go past, or a line in the sand, and when you go past that, they've shut down. If you don't cater to both of those, then you have failed. But what I will say is that we're in the age where data, everything is data based, and we show that these algorithms show with this data. And I can tell you that Ashtabula, area city schools, has an enormous amount of data. We have two positions within the district where what they do is just collect data.
Analytics.
And it's important. Are we utilizing that data?
That was going to be my next question. What are we doing with that data?
I don't know.
Because
I,
all right,
Yeah.
so since we're here, let's talk about it. So IEPs, Ashtabula area city schools, 1/3 of all the students are on IEPs, correct?
Yes,
To me, that's a huge number.
it is.
That is a huge number. Is there so as far as other districts in the in the county or even other schools in the state? Like, is there enough data or significant data that shows that IEPs actually help?
There is.
And just are there also counter studies that say it does not work?
So I don't know about the counter studies. For I'll let you know, but I will tell you that there's a lot of data that shows that an IEP works, and I want to tell you the implementation and I guess the invention really of an IEP to me is one of the greatest additions to education.
Absolutely.
I look at I look at the way anybody with an IEP would have been treated when we were in school. There was kind of two ways. You either just kind of let them flounder in I won't say normal, typical classes
Yeah.
in or they were put into a classroom, where they were considered learning disabled.
Correct.
And we know the connotations, and we know the we know the way those kids were treated. Like, let's talk real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I looked, and I've got friends that were in those classes that I said,
Same.
dude, you are not learning disabled at all. Like, you're smarter than me. You know what I mean? Like, there's a behavior issue, or there's a mental health issue, which back then we just called crazy, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? But the individualized education plan takes a look at the student as an individual, and it figures out these are where your deficits are. Like, here is where the standard is, and here's where the typical child of your age group is going to read, write, and have the ability to learn. Here are your deficits. And rather than just saying, well, that sucks, kid. No, we're going to give you all of these, different means so you can succeed. Now, granted, it's the whole horse to water, can't make them drink thing. I understand that. But again, I will always sleep well at night as long as I know that every child has been provided the opportunity, whether that's additional mental health help, whether that's additional reading time. And for full transparency, I'm a parent of a child who's been on an IEP their whole career. So I sit through these meetings and I watch these goals, and I see, I remember one of the first things I said when my child was put on an IEP was, this is great that we're doing this, but what happens when they graduate? Because the world don't have IEPs.
No.
And if you're not creating an adult who can succeed, you have failed the child. I don't care if they know, the capital of every state and they can write their name upside down in Mandarin. If you have created a child that cannot succeed as an adult, the onus is on you.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree to that point.
Absolutely.
So just taking a quick look here. Let me see if I can pull this up. All right, so we're looking here. This is just saying some of the concerns, because this is not a study, but this is a concern that I thought was pretty significant. Concerns of low expectations for IEPs. Significant disadvantage tied to IEP is a concern that students might not be pushed to their limits. The intention behind accommodations is to level the playing field, but there's a risk that educators might consciously or unconsciously set the bar lower for IEP students. I mean, is that pretty common? Does that happen?
So I'll be honest with you. I don't know how common that actually is. And the reason why I say that is because, again, I'm a parent who lives through this.
Yeah.
I've sat through these meetings, and I think each household has to take a different kind of get a grip on the IEP and what their expectations of their child are. I'm sure that is actually something that can happen.
Now, have you seen that in your case with your child?
No, and a lot of it is because the interventional specialist, which is, if you are unfamiliar with that term, these are God's people in the district. Interventional specialists are essentially the tutors, the person who is looking at the IEP to create an individualized education plan, they do such a phenomenal job of finding what your child can do. And one of the safeties, I guess you would call it, like the fail safes in an IEP, is you don't have to meet 100% of your goals. So you meet every 2 years, I believe it is. And if I'm, because I meet every year about my child's, but I don't know if that's typical. So me and the school, we meet every year. We discuss it. We go through the goals. But you're presented with a list, right? So your child has a reading deficit. Okay, your child is an eighth grader, and they read at a third grade level. So you go in there, and we're gonna figure out why. Are they dyslexic? Do they have signal confusion? Do they have, is there some other reason why they're not able to do what peers in their age group can do? They figure out what's going on and why. And then we're going to figure out, because here's the other thing too. Just figuring out why somebody can't read doesn't make them read. And it doesn't fix the reason why they can't read, right? So now you have to figure out, and this is something I've discussed with my children. When you can't do something like everybody else does, you still have to do it. You just got to find your own way to get there.
Right.
So now what we're doing is we're teaching kids defense mechanisms and coping mechanisms to get around and find these new strategies to get to the same goal. There's 15 different ways to get to a path. Even in the Olympics, there's 8 lanes, right? Everybody goes to the same starting or the same finish line. So you get these goals, okay? And we want to reach all of these goals, but you're only going to typically reach like 80% on a successful IEP. So if you are reaching 100% of your goals on an IEP, then you're going to take the difficulty of those goals and you're going to increase it. If you are reaching 30% or you haven't reached any, your IEP is going to stay here, or we're going to bring it back a step so you can start to get back on track. So it's something that is very closely monitored, and there is a huge component of parental, they have to participate. Parental participation is vital. It's huge. But here's what we can control at the school: the child's education, and the people providing it. I can't control what goes on outside of 225. I can't control what goes on before 825. So all we can do is try and bring the parents in, give them an environment that they feel that they trust you, that they feel open to. And you're not always going to have that, right? But that doesn't mean you throw away the child. That just means you're going to have to do a little bit extra work on this child because they're not getting the stuff at home. And again, that none of that falls on what the board does.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what you're doing as a board is you're making sure that the people who you have put into these positions, like a superintendent, are making sure this stuff happens. We have interventional specialists. One of the best I've ever met is at Asheville Area City Schools right now. I've got personal experience with the gentleman. He cares. He does a lot. That's one of the wins. Like, we're not constantly losing. We talk about the negatives all the time. Let's talk about some of the greats. Like, we've got a great interventional specialist. But these IEPs are, I've said, I'll repeat myself again on it. I think they're one of the most important innovations in education. I think it has provided more children a chance to learn, and more children are given a chance to be normal, right?
Let me ask you about all right, so I guess I would have to understand this more. So an IEP, individualized education program. So when students are on an IEP, are they in a general classroom setting with other students, or is it kind of like homeschooled? Is it how does that work?
So every individual education plan is individual. Stupid thing, but so yeah, what you're seeing is you are seeing more children in regular or general or typical, you know what I mean? If I say anything offensive, I'm sorry. But in these classrooms that are typical, the normal classrooms, you may have children in honors classes who are on an IEP, which is something that blew
So they'll
my
still be in a
mind.
classroom setting with 20 other kids.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But what this does is it says, well, maybe you have a reading deficit, and because you have that reading deficit, you're going to be in this classroom, but we're going to provide you a little extra time here. Or maybe you're neurodivergent, and you want to take a test, but all the kids clicking their pencils and writing, or the lights are getting on, so you can't do it. But we know that if we take you and we put you in this setting, that we will get a true idea of what you know. It's those sort of things that IEPs are identifying and supposed to cater to, right? What a wonderful thing. Like, think about all the times, all the kids that we've talked about that kind of slipped through the cracks when we were in school. And all they needed was just a little bit of there's no one way to success. And that's kind of how it was treated
Mhm.
when we were in school, right? Like, this is how you're going to succeed. And if you don't, sucks.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly.
But now they look at you and they're, well, if you can't succeed in this area, can you succeed if we try it here or if we do it this way? And that's what I said. So, like, an IEP is not to, like, make everything easy. It's not, you don't go from writing an essay to getting a multiple choice question because you're on an IEP, right? No, the expectations are going to be the same, assuming you have a good interventional specialist, and we do. So, assuming you have that, because that interventional specialist outside of the superintendent, those are the most important, like, parts of this IEP. Like, they are the ones who are identifying, and if you don't properly identify, again, you're underserving the student.
And how is so I asked this question to Darius. He wasn't exactly sure. Maybe you have a little bit more information compared to other districts. How is our IEP program doing?
Um, our graduation rate's not great. So they're kind of like the statistics you use to determine, right? Our graduation rate isn't great. That's one of the things that kind of show you where it's at. We take a ton of IEP students that other districts can't properly serve. All over the county, like as far down south as, like, Orwell area, Geneva, Buckeye, that sort of thing. We take a lot of children that require a lot of additional help, additional resources. So when it comes to how our IEPs are compared to other schools, we probably, and I'm telling you, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just going based on what I know from children and parents who have children with IEPs who have graduated or unfortunately not. I don't know that you could even fairly compare them, because the incidence of high risk IEP children in Ashtabula Area City School District is so much more than that of Geneva or Buckeye or Jefferson. Like,
Why?
because they can't serve them. So when a child can't be served in another district, and this is well known, like, I'm not uncovering anything here.
Right.
They're like, go to Lakeside, they can help you. Like, they've got more.
So let me ask you. So let me ask you. So last week Darius said that Jefferson was ranked much higher than Lakeside is at the state level, state report card,
Yes.
so to speak. So we might get a student from Jefferson come in that needs an IEP because we can better serve them.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you convince the parent to come to Lakeside when we have a failing grade to leave that school that's much better performing? Like what's the thought process behind that? Because, like, just as me, if I'm sitting there and so my son's on an IEP, my son needs help.
Right.
How am I going to make that decision of, hey, I'm in a much better school district. Why would I go to a failing one? Am I making sense with that question?
You are.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
I'm gonna tell you how they do that.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you why they do that, right?
Fantastic.
So you're a 4.5 star school.
Mhm.
Okay. You have this child who has behavioral issues. They may be a neurodivergent child. They may have physical disabilities.
Okay.
every put like everything you add onto an IEP, it costs the district more and more and more
More
and
cash to
more
shell out.
to
It
educate that
costs
child.
them.
It costs them.
So, but there's funding.
There is, and I'm going to
Okay.
get to that.
Okay.
I'm going to get to that. So some districts have all of these measures already, right? Because they see it so regularly. So they're going to they're going to have it constantly. Now, you as a district, everything you take, if you take in all these additional assistive devices and personnel, and some students in the district require a full-time nurse with them all day long,
Mhm.
right? You take that on, it's on your budget and it's going to stay there until that student is gone. Whereas Lakeside, they're already doing it.
Mhm.
So what they do is they say, well, I know that Lakeside isn't passing the state test, but that's not going to be your kid. Go over there. Go over there. They can better serve you. And God bless the people who are doing it, because these kids who are getting IEPs and who have these nurses and who have these additional these additional resources and stuff, they are being served. They are being served, and you do get great service for children who need it. But that's really what it is. They like a lot of times people, you're not seeing kids come from you're not seeing the 4.0 kid go from the 4.5 to Lakeside. You know what I mean? They're saying, I think maybe that you have some emotional issues and we don't offer the counseling that you need. But you know who does? Lakeside. So go over there, we'll give you the counseling, because there is a state funding component to an IEP. So the state looks at how much does it cost to educate a child? Okay. Here's the standard. If you have an IEP, all of these additional factors and little like tree branches that are added onto your standard, the state recognizes, like, all right, it's going to cost, it'll cost $20 to educate you, $25 to educate me, $30 to educate you. Well, I got to make sure you guys are all educated. So here's how much we're going to pay out. So you make sure. So that's where that IEP kind of that funding comes in. And that's where, some of the things I'm going to be asking when I get to the board, not when, if I get a chance to get on the board. Some of the things I want to know is what are we doing with that? We've got guys like Mark Astorino who are the treasurer, and they run, they can tell you, he can tell you where every penny in that place is spent. And that's an important person to talk to, because they can show you. But the other things you can do is you can look at all the measures that were passed. So these IEPs, like, to roundabout to your question again, is why would somebody go from another school to Lakeside for their IEP? And it's simply because they serve it better.
Okay.
And they have more resources there. At least that's what we're told.
Okay. Okay. You can only go by what you're told.
Right,
You can only go by
right.
what-
So if the state's providing funding, why? So there's also an issue right now with losing parapros, correct?
Yes.
And these parapros, they're getting, their positions are being cut. That's by district, or is that by, like, is the state saying, all right, we're giving you less money now, or how's this working?
So during COVID, there was something called the ESSER Fund, the Elementary and Secondary Relief Funding Act. So just like everybody else got COVID money,
The
hospitals
schools did
got a
too.
ton of COVID money, schools got a ton of COVID money. It was money.
It was Oprah. Oprah
We
was
were
giving out money
flush
to
with
everybody.
cash.
Some Ralphio style. Ralphio style.
So there were all these funds going around that they recognized, that in order to keep these institutions open, you were going to need this extra money. So the other part of that is those ESSER funds, man, they really could go to almost anything. You could really, there was not a whole lot typically with funding that goes to the school, right? You get,
It's allocated to something.
yeah, like you can only use it in this category for this money, or this category for this money. And then there's general funds, which can kind of pay for everything.
A lot of different
So
things,
you'll
yeah.
see a lot of times boards will try and move funds from, say, an ESSER to a general, or from this group to this group. They have to, but there's a whole measure and everything that they have to do with that to make it legal, right? So again, the money is running dry, and with that ESSER fund, there was the creation of positions. There was the creation of programs. They paid for some, stuff throughout the district. And now that it's gone, they are running in a deficit. And it's illegal for a public school to run in a deficit.
How long have we been running in a deficit?
We're not. And
Oh, we're not.
No, we're not. It is illegal. You have 1 year. If you go into a deficit, you have 1 year. Otherwise, the state, it's like, think about it like having a checkbook when you're 17 or a debit card when you're 18.
And your parents.
And your parents are like, listen, you're overdrafted today. You got till tomorrow. Yeah. Otherwise,
I'm 24-hour grace.
Right. Otherwise, I'm going to come take it. And that's what the state does. The state says, well, if you can't fix your money, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And the one thing you don't want is the state to come in and take over. The state comes and takes over. You are a number. You are not a person. You are not a face. There is no school board. There is no principal. There's no school board. There's no superintendent. None of that. The school is taken over by the school.
By the state.
By the state.
Yeah.
And they run everything. You have your principals and your teachers, but everything goes to the state.
Do you think... So let me ask you a question. What would be the downside of that?
So the downside of that is your school is a reflection of your community. Okay. We talk about diversity, and that's one of the things that's a big issue this year. Your school, when you look at your school and your administrators and your teachers and your children, it should really give you what this community is. Okay. When the state comes in and they take over, all they're doing is making sure you're meeting the minimums and there's no personal touch to it, right? They don't care who you are, where they're at. This is how it's going to go. Beep, 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 beep. There are people that do believe that the state should have taken over, like that D was more harmful than good.
So, and the reason I ask that is because I'm sure the state has a standardized way of doing basically everything.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think that would be a bad thing.
I don't know that it would be a bad thing either. I wouldn't prefer it. Okay.
So I don't think, I think if we can do it on our own.
Yeah.
But you know what, like you said, as a parent of a 17-year-old, if my 17-year-old continually overdrafts or, spends his money frivolously on basically anything or they're getting in trouble with the law or whatever it is, eventually I have to step in as a parent and say, guess what? Shit's over. It's done.
Yes.
I'm taking over. Right.
Yes.
And things can get back on track that way.
Yeah. And so think about like a state takeover. Okay. Think of a state takeover as you own an auto parts store.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You run your own auto parts store, and then Napa comes and buys you out. So there are a lot of things that you would do the way you're going to do it. Right. There's a personal touch, that you're going to add to it. When corporate comes in, think about corporate. Think of anything with the state. Think about corporate. That's basically what it is.
And I understand that. And I think there's a positive to the way some of these corporates are run because it's standardized.
It is. But I personally believe, okay, and I don't know this to be 100% true, but when you have this super standard, right? I think you have a higher instance of people who fall through the crack, right?
If people are already falling through the cracks,
right?
You know what I'm saying,
right?
And these aren't cracks; these are
this is another
gaping
thing
holes.
to think about. And Sam touched on this: when the state takes over, the kids become just a number.
I understand
Everything
that.
becomes just a number.
I understand that.
And the thing is to succeed, the kids ultimately play the biggest part in the success of the school. Graduation rates,
right?
Attendance.
But here's my thing:
if the kid's just a number, how is anything going to succeed? That personal touch is gone. So there's no more. There's no more.
Let me ask you, what would change?
So again, you don't have a board. You don't have a superintendent. Everything goes through Columbus. So think about how long it takes to get anything done right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then add some time to that.
Oh, I know.
You know what I
I'm
mean?
aware. I am very familiar with the governmental processes.
You know, you really are,
Right.
right? So you understand the highs and lows. So the nice thing is that this is going to be a steady ship. The bad thing is it's not a ship you really want to be on.
It's a sinking ship.
Right.
Right.
Like it's a ship you don't really want to be on. So again, and then the community input on it, right, is also gone. There's no board members, so you're not. There is no. You know, my child suffered this, and I'm gonna go talk to my principal, my superintendent, my board. No, you're gonna have to submit it to the state, and then they'll see what they get done.
Yeah, but I
You know, whereas if
I
you have a board member or you have a superintendent, at least there you're talking to a person, right? It's like, do you want to talk to an automated system? Do you want to talk to a person? That, you know what I mean? That kind of back and
no,
forth.
I understand that, but I don't know. Maybe to me, I see it differently because I see, you know, the state would have a greater interest of maybe resolving some issues because if a state can't even run a school, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, and that's the thing. So that what they will is they will run that thing like a machine.
That's what I'm saying.
They will run that
and
thing like a
I don't think that's
machine.
necessarily a bad thing.
But you know, not all schools survive it
I understand. I
because
understand. And maybe, and I'm not saying it's the right move for Lakeside
Well,
or
right,
Ashtabula. I'm
and-
just saying I could see how it could be beneficial.
we're already so Lakeside Ashtabula area city schools is already has this major issue with children separating from the district and going to Buckeye, going to Jefferson, Geneva, St. John. You know, there's already this huge issue. And you put a state bug on there and that it goes 10 times because you go wherever you want. Like you pretty much can already go wherever you want, right? So you add that another negative on top of it, right? And people just run. And you know, you go from a school with 2,000 kids to a school with 700 or 800 kids, and we become Ledgemont.
So it's
Right.
kind of like at that point, it's like when Deion Sanders took over Colorado. All those kids that were on that team that
They
won an
wanted to
11
go
team.
there. Yeah.
Deion comes in and he goes, I've got my guys and they don't have baggage. They have Louis Vuitton.
Mm-hmm.
So get the hell out of here. And then you saw 53 kids come in, but you saw 49 kids leave. And those 49 kids that left, not necessarily flourishing, but they might be in a better position. But at the same time, you had a mass exodus, and that's not a good look for anybody. Because even though Deion comes in and does his thing, you still lost 49 kids, bro. You know what I mean?
And can you maintain that?
Exactly.
What happens when your 53 leave?
Yeah. You're not going to get a Travis Hunter and Shiloh
Right.
and Shadur every year.
Right.
And I apologize for using a sports metaphor there, Anthony, but it's just like, that's just what it is. I mean, next year, Deion's not going to be able to bring in Marvin Harrison Jr.
Right.
You know? So it's not going to be that.
Right. So you apply that right to these school systems, okay? And say this mass exodus continues and kids continue to leave the district. And this isn't new, okay? Because another thing that I try to be very transparent about everything, right? My kids don't go to the district. My kids have been in St. John for 10 years.
That was going to be a question I asked you because I mean I've heard your response on other platforms and other talks that you've given, but maybe some people who are watching have not. So
Yeah.
tell us, your kids obviously do not go to Ashtabula area city schools. I guess I'm sure people are wondering, why do you care?
Yeah.
Why do you want to be on the board?
So first, one of the biggest reason, I guess, for me is I'm a graduate of this school district. I believe that the man I am today, the person who I am, was molded not in these hallways. I was molded over it when it was at Ashtabula, but you know what I mean. I didn't get the really beautiful building that they have now, but I'm still a Lakeside guy. I don't know. I was never a Panther. I was never a Mariner. I was a Puma. I was a Chestnut Warrior, but I never, the only letters that ever made my jacket I said at the thing were L's, which sounds terrible, but
All I got are L's, dog.
but no, like, so this is my school. It's a point of pride, and anytime you look at something that helped you get to where you are, you never want to watch it, fail. You never want to watch it flounder the way it has for years and years and years. Now, with that being said, I've looked at things I can do, and the things that I can do for this district are provide an open ear, provide a new perspective, provide, an advocate for children and for families that need it, that sort of thing. Provide somebody who's going to listen to other board members, even if I don't agree with them. Provide that perspective. Why don't my kids go to the district, right?
Yes.
That's the big question. So my child went to Asheville Area City Schools for 1 year. And I never paid attention to where the school stood. I never paid attention to the report cards, any of that. I never saw where the deficits were until my child started school, because it's like when, it's just like when you have a kid, right? Like, you're not thinking about all these other things. And then when you have a kid, you start thinking about everything, because now it's no longer just, I'm not going to suffer. Now I've got a child that's going to suffer, and I'll be damned if they're going to suffer, right? Like, I'm going to kill, I would kill for them kids.
Right.
So she went there for a year. She went there for kindergarten, and it was not a great experience.
Now, is this the oldest or the middle?
The oldest.
Okay.
So it wasn't a great experience. And I thought, well, maybe this is just school, right? Maybe this is just school. And there were some things that she was seeing and hearing and that just weren't appropriate. You know what I mean? You had some kids mixed together with age group wise, you know what I mean? And then you look at the report cards, and not just her report card, but the state, but you look at the report card from the state, right? And you see these failing numbers, right? And you're like, no, not mine. Like, I can't have that. So that's why one of the things I will never, and then, bringing my children over to St. John, like, whether I get elected to the board or not, I will never, ever, ever bash St. John. It's a wonderful education over there. They do an awesome job. So whatever area provides the best opportunity for your child is where they should be. My goal is, with all the resources that Asheville Area City Schools has, I want to make it that school that you want to send your kids to. I don't want to make it the school of, I want it to be the school of choice, not the school you have to go to.
Right.
So, and you look all over the county, there are people who are sending their kids out of the district because they've recognized these shortcomings and the issues that have popped up. Again, ed choice, not popular opinion, is awesome. Wherever your child can succeed is where they should go. Freedom of choice is the most important of all of them, right? Like, this is what guys like you fought for, right? Was so that we could come out here and prosper and stuff like that. So again, Lakeside and Ashtabula Area City Schools, if we work on it, can be a destination, not somewhere you just have to be. And that's where I'm at with it. You know what I mean? I've got 3 kids, and all of them have been sent to St. John because right now the environment and what is going on in Lakeside is just not something that I want to sacrifice my children to try and get better. And that's the thing. I'll never ask anybody to sacrifice their children for anything. So if you have taken your child out of the district, I understand. I completely do. My goal is that maybe if I get elected and in the next 4 years, we've created an area where people have faith in the school again.
Are there any resolutions that the board has recently passed that maybe didn't receive enough discussion, or you just would have completely voted against?
So I actually brought this up at one of the meetings, and thank God it did not pass. One of the big things they tried to kind of push through was they were going to make board meetings start at the public participation board
10
meetings
a.m.
at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no way. Like, first of all, I know why.
On a Wednesday.
Yeah. And I know why they're doing that.
Why is that?
Because the whole point was that every time the public came, they would basically have to use a Q-tip to get the junk out of their ear because they just got ham boned. Like, it was bad. And that, you know what, when you're failing, you should get absolutely roasted every single meeting because you're failing the kids, right? So I brought it up, and then it was later said, well, we were, I just want to clarify that that was just for the summer months and da 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 da. That's not what the resolution said. The resolution actually said we're going to move it to 10 for the remainder of the year.
Indefinitely.
Yeah.
Oh, for the remainder of the year.
For the remainder of the year.
Gotcha.
So that was
the calendar year.
Yeah, that was, well, no, because they do everything in January. So the January board meeting, if you guys are ever going to go to a board meeting, that's the one.
That's the one.
Well,
That's the
that's
one.
where they basically set the budget and everything. Right?
Yeah, you're going to see everything. The board policies are going to be discussed there. Any changes, all
That's
those
where they
sort of
pick president and
president, vice president. But the big one is like the board policies. So like meeting days, meeting times, those sort of things. And granted, all those things can be amended, which is what they try to do. But I brought it up at the meeting, and I said, I understand that you guys are sick of people talking to you, but
That's kind of what you're there for.
yeah, and not only that, so this is a public, so legally you have to have this open to the public, right?
Right.
They have to. They're not doing this.
Well, if they moved it to 10, it's not closed to the public. It's just a little bit harder to access.
Right, but now, so what have you done is you've created a safety issue for your children because there's no vetting. You
For
can
the
go wherever
boards.
you want.
Yeah.
Anybody can come in there. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have general public people coming into your school for a meeting because Lakeside has their meetings inside the school. So we're going to grant access to general public. Come on, man. That's insane.
I could see where that would be an issue.
I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone with any intention can come there.
You're right.
And you don't want to think that anyone with ill intentions comes, but I mean,
The possibilities there.
the possibilities there. And in this, we talked about culture. We've talked about generations. We've talked about things that are different now. And the sad fact of the matter is that schools aren't as safe as they used to be, even when they're locked down.
Right.
I mean, so you're bringing someone in, like, what can happen, And I mean, the onus is on the school board to create a safe environment for the kids. And I'm not saying there was ill intentions there because the school board wants to do what's best for the kids. You hope.
You would hope.
But
yeah.
I mean, I don't think like my kid goes to Austinburg, right? So say they held school board meetings there. Hey man, we're gonna do it Wednesday at 10 a.m. Well, my kid's in the special needs room just down the hall.
Exactly.
Bro. Like, and they can't push 20 wheelchairs out of there at any given time if need be. So I ain't cool with that. I'd be a proponent against that.
So let me say, so for, I guess one of the other things that I saw as far as the rules for the board meetings is there's only 15 minutes allocated to public discussion.
Yeah.
And you get 3
5
minutes.
minutes
Each
max.
individual gets 3 minutes. So really,
I thought it was 5.
no, it's 3 minutes
It's
per
3,
person and up to 15 minutes for total public, like total. So if there's 10 people that want to talk, you're going to have to get like a minute and a half each.
Yeah.
Because, is that something you would work to change?
Absolutely. So you look at Geneva, and that's a whole nother.
I was going to
Ball
ask you
of
about
wax.
Geneva here in a second.
That's a whole nother ball of wax out there, which, if you're out there, vote Pierce. But you look at the way they do it, and I think they allot maybe 5 minutes to each one of their people. So I'm assuming that it's up to the board. So there has to be a public participation portion.
Right.
And then the amount of time is then determined by the board. But I can tell you, as I sat through these board meetings where they only time who they want to. And they're only going to listen to stuff that makes their ears flutter. So you're first and foremost, when that public participation time, you cannot talk directly to a board member because they cannot respond back to you.
Right.
So that's one of the issues. I don't know where that stands, and I'll be 100% honest with you because I don't know how I feel about that. Now, I don't want it to become this, Dirty Dozens thing where, whoever roasts each other the best, wins, but there needs to be conversation, right?
I don't think I agree with that. Because you don't want it to turn into a pissing match or a shouting match.
Right.
Right. But I think it would be fair for somebody to directly, for a member of the public. I mean, to me, I don't think you should put a cap on somebody's speech. A citizen at that, so a taxpayer. I don't think you should limit what they can say in a public forum.
Right.
So I think if I want to go in there and criticize one board member in particular for 5 minutes, I should be able to do that.
I
Because
agree.
there is a what do they call it? A redress of grievances,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if my grievances are with a particular board member, I should be able to go in there and say that.
And here's
But I don't think that the board members should be able to respond.
and I agree with you there. And that's why, like, the give and take on it, and I'll tell you why, because there's only one person that's in that room that has any expectations elected to them.
The president.
So no, like anybody who's on the board.
What do you mean? So wait, say that again. So there's only one person there.
There's only one person in
I
that
see what you're
exchange is
saying.
what
I
I
see.
mean,
I
that
see.
has
Okay.
any
Okay.
expectations elected to them. So, well, again, we talked about it right in the beginning of this, right? Like, when you take a public office, just get ready to absolutely get lambasted,
Mhm.
and that's going to happen. But you know the whole, well, you can't talk about board members, you can't talk about this, you can't talk. First of all, if they're public, they can talk about what they want.
I agree.
So let them talk about what they want, and the board president can address back, and that's where you talk about, do you have an effective board president? Because we don't. I haven't had the. I've never seen this board president right now fight for anybody that wasn't a running candidate of his before he got on. I'll put it there. So, there's that part. Public participation, I have been parts of meetings where has gone on for 20, 30, 40 minutes. Because, I'll just, like, we'll talk about when the whole sexual misconduct thing was going on, right? You had victims that showed up there. I dare you to tell a victim that their time is up when they're talking. I dare you to tell the mother of a victim that she's hit 3 minutes. Stop talking. They tried, and that went over like a fart in church. Like, you cannot, like, when these people are talking, as far as I'm concerned, for public participation, that public meeting that you have once a month, I don't care if it takes 3 hours. You let the public come and you let them talk, and everything that is going on that they feel needs to be said should be heard. If you don't want to hear what the public has to say about how you're doing your job, don't take an elected position.
I agree, but I do believe there should be a time limit on how long each person could talk. I do agree with that. But I don't agree with the total overall cap on minutes. So for the 15 minutes, toss that shit. If you want to give them 3 minutes apiece, that's fine. But if 100 people are in line to speak, give all 100 of them 3 minutes.
See, and initially I agreed with it too. Okay, and I'll be honest with you. I was like, because nobody wants somebody to go up there and read the Star Wars trilogy, for 4 hours and filibuster, right?
Right.
like
Yeah.
we don't want that either, right? So there has to be. But then I watched a mother of an abused child within the district who had to learn from her adult child the atrocities that had happened to her while she was here. And I watched her go up there and talk. And I watched a woman whose heart was in a million different pieces have to discuss the pain that her child went through, the pain that she is going through, and the regrets and all those sort of things, and express to the board how this district allowed that to happen. If you can talk to me until the sun comes up, if that makes you feel better, because you've already suffered enough at the hands of this place, right? So when there's stuff going on, if somebody is going up, and that's where judgment comes in, right? And we say we kind of want this whole uniform thing, but there's no uniform anything. If somebody's up there and they're talking about something that's important, and it's important to them, and it's something that needs to be heard, you let them go. You let them talk.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going up there and all they're talking about is, they want sidewalk chalk. Okay, you got 3 minutes. You know what I mean?
I think
And that's
fair.
what they've done typically.
Yeah, I mean, the board ultimately has say, but I think, I think there should be a 3 minute cap with discretion.
And there is, and that's pretty much what it is. Like, so there's a 3 minute
fair.
cap, but the last meeting I went to, they allowed a speech to go on for 6.5 minutes. And the speech basically talked about, how terrible Tim was doing and how great everybody else was doing. And it was wild to me, because this was the exact same board that I watched. Literally, they used to do this to people when they were talking. and have a timer in front of them. Like, how uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Ugh.
yeah. It's there's this huge double standard that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, because I know those things exist, but I've never seen anything that's anywhere near as blatant as this.
So, so there's obviously a an imbalance on the board, or it appears to be. I mean, Darius mentioned it a few times. It's 4-1 basically every. I don't want to, because I've looked at the minutes. Not everything is 4-1. A lot of it's 5-0. A lot of them, they're on the same page. I would say, as far as business, as far as funding, things like that, a lot of the time they're on the same page.
Yes.
I guess it would come down to personnel is when you notice that there's a split of some sort.
Yes.
There's a fracture. What's going on?
It's thick. That's a loaded question, and I'll tell you why. Tim. I think Tim's going to be coming to see you guys this week too.
Yes.
He will be able to so much more eloquently than me explain exactly what's going on. Right. Nepotism's a real thing. It exists. It has been a large part of the culture in the district for a long time, and.
Now, when we say a long time, are we talking dating back to like the 90s? Are we talking dating back to 2003? Are we talking 2020?
Before we started,
And that's all arbitrary.
Yeah. No,
well, and I think you said you read the minutes or from all the way back to like the 90s or
that's
something.
Why I brought up
Yeah.
1993.
So I could speak to 1993,
Yeah.
and I can tell you that there are the same family names that
Candela.
have, there are the same family names that have kind of been a part of these boards or in positions for since 1993 and well
decades.
before then, right? So it exists, and I think nepotism, there's part of it that everybody would fall victim to, right? If you are putting somebody in a position of power, you're going to want somebody you can trust. And who can you trust better than somebody that you see every day or every Thanksgiving?
And see, I was going to ask that because I don't think, I mean, if somebody says, "Hey, I need if I'm in charge of something and somebody says, "Hey, I need an announcer or somebody who's good on camera and can talk to people," whatever the case is, I'll run through the filing cabinet of people I know in my head, and I'm like, you know what, Sammy Torres. I know Sammy Torres. I know he's good at what he does. You know what? I'm gonna talk to Sammy, see if he's interested. If he's interested, maybe I can help him get on here because I think he'll do good at it. Right. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think there can be issues with that when you have conflicts of interest, maybe doing special favors, things like that. I mean, are we seeing things like that?
And that's the question, Anthony, and this is where we're at right now. Like, so you have an issue where it's such a small town, right? Everybody's involved with everything.
Right.
But you have this issue where questions are brought up why people are doing certain things, and are there debts to be paid?
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And to overlook that. So my problem is to even make that a possibility, I think, is a ballsy move. But to completely ignore that when people bring it up is the worst.
Yeah.
And what it does is I think it kind of gives everybody this sense of corruption, right?
Sure.
And I think everybody just assumes that there's an acceptable amount of corruption, and I'm not one of those people. I just don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that you can do things. There is nothing wrong with hiring somebody that is within your family. There's nothing wrong with that. Assuming that person is the best qualified and the best person to do that job. I will never, because at that point there's reverse nepotism too. Like, well, we can't hire. I hate that for some companies too. They're like, well, if you work here, none of your family can work here either.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
Yeah.
Like, if they're qualified, as long as they're the most qualified individual, then they always should be allowed to, you know what I mean, to be in that position.
Yeah,
But
I think I think it has. Personally, I'm more of a merit base.
Yes.
You know, I would, and that's why. So I've heard Tim mention it as well in some of his talks. DEI. Um, when you guys talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Yes.
right? So I know that's something that you push. You want to see more diversity, but me being merit based, I don't give a shit what color your skin is. Can you do the job or can you not?
Right.
So, what do you say to people like me who say, "Cool, yeah, diversity is cool if it plays out like that. If the person is more qualified to have the position, but if they're not qualified, I'm not hiring them based on their skin color."
Yes.
What do you say to somebody like that?
So I think that's a great point, right? I think that's so diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not a they like affirmative action, right? It's
Yeah.
not the same thing
It's
as
not
that.
like the Rooney Rule with
And
Right,
can you
right,
explain
right.
how
coaches.
can you explain how it's different?
So diversity and inclusion, it's to get all of these subgroups of people, right? These smaller sects of people, and it is not just skin color, right? It's the neurodivergent. It's the the LGBTQ IA plus. Thank you,
Yes.
because I don't want to forget anything.
No.
So it's the inclusion of all these groups that have had difficulties in progression in society, right? And making sure you're at least providing an equal opportunity to them. So you look at the district as it's made up now, right? I went to West Junior. You went to West Junior High.
I did.
You went to
Columbus.
So Columbus, where was Miss Dismuke there?
No, Miss Atkinson.
Okay.
Yes.
So the last black teachers that I saw were at West Junior High. And when Lakeside came to be, we went from people like Miss Sherry Cooley,
Mhm.
Mr.
was my
Kamal
principal.
Chapman,
Yeah.
In roles, administrative roles, right? Where there were these people of color who were succeeding and being allowed to lead. We haven't had anything since Dr. Perkins, who was only allowed to be here for like 2 years.
It's very interesting you say that because now I'm taking inventory of any teacher of color that I ever had, and the last one I can remember was 4th grade at Saybrook Elementary, Miss Daisy Baskerville.
So there
or
you go.
Mr. Jim Hood, who was,
Yes.
and he wasn't even my teacher; he was my tennis coach.
So,
you know what I mean?
So do you see what I mean?
I do see what you mean.
The whole point of this diversity, equity, and inclusion is to go out and make sure that, first of all, Ashtabula has created an environment where people of color feel like they have the opportunity to succeed. And I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. I don't think that is what we are portraying. I think we went from, we have, somebody like a Kelly Washington, who is somehow has become this controversial figurehead in this whole thing, which does not want any part of that. Like, she is just a woman who worked for the Department of Education of Ohio, who has a doctoral degree.
Right.
From Harvard, isn't it?
No, that is our DEI, Relisha
Okay.
Holman, who has a
Okay.
Harvard education.
Okay, I apologize.
No, yeah, but you've got these very, very qualified. You've got Dr. Perkins, who was just in here, and these are all African American. They're black people, okay? And they had a chance to lead, and you look at it, it's almost like there was a time limit on it. And how quickly, you look at, and this is no shot at anybody, because I think Andy O, who's the current athletic director at Lakeside, is doing a phenomenal job.
Oh, sure.
I think he has stepped up, and you look at the athletics there, and they are really thriving. But you look at somebody like Sean Allgood, who was chased out of there. And it's just, at some point you have to start asking the question, why? Because every other time those positions are held for decades.
Yeah, I heard you mention at I believe it was Meet the Candidate Night. You mentioned a riff as far as some of the minorities that held positions in the district, and you said you see a lot of them riff.
Yeah.
So first of all, explain real briefly what a riff is.
It's a reduction in force. So the riff is just basically saying our budget, we're over budget, we have to cut somewhere, and this is where we're gonna cut.
So those will be positions. The riff would be for the position.
Yes, they would be positions. I do want to clarify something too that I saw before. I think with the Darius thing, the Board of Education does not hire and does not fire anybody other than the superintendent.
Okay.
So who hires and fires the teachers, principals?
The superintendent.
Got it.
Okay.
So now, do you like, this is where I try to explain to the public, this is why the board matters so much, because the person who makes the decisions on these things is hired by the board.
Right.
So it's like one step above, but there are like, the board is not, the board is not going to fire parapros and stuff like that. Now the board can approve measures that can cause parapros to be fired. They can also approve measures that can cause parapros to come back into the district. So, again, here lies the power for all that. So one of the things is, the board is very, very important. The superintendent of any school district is so important. So important.
Before you guys get into more, I do want to apologize. I have work I have to get to here.
Actually, I was going to pass it to you, Tom. Is there anything that you want to address before? Because I know you have to take off. And
yeah,
I mean, Sam and I don't even know if there might be something you want to get to, but
I think that a lot of the questions that I wanted to ask were answered in fashion I didn't even need to ask. It's been a great morning. I really appreciate having the time with you, Sam. And I wish you nothing but success going forward. I really hope that we get to see positive results for you come Tuesday. Yeah, it was it flashbacks to like 01 being back on a show with you here. So yeah, so I apologize for Emily. I just didn't want to, but before you guys got into something, I didn't want to like jump in and be like, yo, I gotta bounce, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks guys, and they're gonna keep going.
See you, Tom. We love you.
Come buy a car from me.
Yes,
brother. Thank you.
Take it easy, Tom.
Tom.
All right, I'll see you.
I feel
tomorrow.
it. Yes, sir. Yeah, I feel like we're off balance now. Let me fix this camera.
Get your car from TR.
That'll be all right.
Yeah, I think that works.
Maybe we'll trim that up a little bit. Make it look a little nicer. Or we'll just run it raw. It doesn't matter. Sam, is there anything that you want to touch on?
So yeah, the only thing I kind of want to touch on a little bit again, and we briefly kind of touched on in the beginning, is the importance of changing this board. So the cycle of the board, okay, is that you elect 3 and then you elect 2. So like the last cycle of 3 was Bill Nemi, Deborah Berrickman, and Christine Seifert. They ran together as a trio. Their decisions ran together as a trio too. So the board, that number 3 really does matter. So when people ask me like, well, why are you talking about Fleming and why are you talking about Williams? Because it's important that we, for the first time in the history of the district, we have a chance to flip the board to a new mindset. Not that the other two votes won't matter, because one thing I will always be is fair, and I will always listen to their point of views and their perspectives and that sort of thing. And if it's something that I agree with, or I agree, even if it's something I don't agree with it, but it's something that I can recognize is beneficial to the district, then I will hear anybody's thoughts. And I think anybody who doesn't believe that has no purpose in leadership. They have no business being there. But with, Darius and Tim and myself, like that's a new mindset for this district. That's why it's important to vote for 3. Now there are two races. So myself and Darius, and then there's 2 other opponents there. So you've got Scott Yopp and you've got Don Rapus. Don Rapus is sitting. The other race is Tim Fleming and Laura Jones,
Right.
and that is for the chair that was vacated by Seifert.
Basically, because it's an unexpired seat.
Right.
So that would be for 2 years.
That's going to be for 2 years. So it's not, you know, when you look at the ballot, and I shared this to my Samuel Torres for Asheville Area City School Board page, the actual ballot. Make sure you're really looking at it. You don't vote for Tim, Darius, and Sam in one box. You know what I mean? It's Sam and Darius, and then Tim. It's Sam and Darius versus Don and Scott, and Tim versus Laura. That's really where this race is.
Right.
And you know, like I talked about before, I wasn't sure if I was going to go like ticket, like long ticket or whatever, because I don't want to tell people what to do, you know, who to vote for and that sort of thing. I know there are some people I feel like I can work with. But I'm new to this whole thing. Like I've never been a politician. Like I'm a nurse. I'm a sports broadcaster. I'm a dad. Those are my 3 titles. That's what I got. But you know, I kind of looked on the other side and I said, man, they are all sticking together. Like you look at, like, just play the yard sign game. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're gonna see.
You're gonna see three in 1 yard. Yeah.
You're gonna see 3 in 1 yard. You've got a sitting president who has been very vocal in
as far as co-signing for those 3.
Yes.
Yeah. I've noticed that. Oh, I had a question. Oh, so you ran. So when that seat was vacated, you ran for that seat.
Yeah.
Against Laura Jones.
I did.
Against Peach or no.
No. I was for the appointment.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know who was on there other than Laura, honestly.
Peach Chapman.
Oh, Peachy was? Okay.
Yeah. Because I do remember seeing in the minutes that Tim made a motion for you. It was seconded by Rapuz.
Okay.
The vote failed 2-2.
Yeah.
And then there was a motion for Peachy.
Yeah.
No second. Then there was a motion for Laura, and that passed 3-1.
Yes. And you know, I've gone back and forth on you know why that was where it was, because so like Don Rapuz, you know, even though he's in the same race as me right now, you know, somebody who I deeply respect, always have. He was my teacher when I was at Lakeside 9. When he ran the first time, you know, I went and told him, I said, yeah, you got my support all the time, like for sure. You know what I mean? And, you know, he came out and he said, you know, like when they asked him why he was running, he's like, you know, because I feel like I kind of have to. But Rapuz has done a lot for the district. So, you know, I don't know. I'm not speaking for him, but, you know, I don't think it's going to crush his world if I get a turn here. You know what I mean? But
well, he obviously must support you somewhat, or at least have somewhat trust in you, because he seconded Tim's motion back in 2001, I believe. No, 2022.
Yeah.
22, whenever Tim made the motion to appoint you for that vacancy.
Yeah, and you know, it was interesting because it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. You know, you go there and you're interviewed and they talk to you similar to what we're doing, except at the end you're not going to vote me in or out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I talked to these guys, I talked to the group or whatever, and you know, I think if I'm not mistaken, somebody was on a call, or they weren't available to be there, or something like that. You know, I talked to him. Everything kind of went well. You know what I mean? It was one of those things that I knew the vacant seat was there, and it needed to be filled by somebody who cared deeply about the district, and that was me. It didn't go that way. I've heard stories on why. You know, one of the things that got brought up is one particular board member did not like what I had to say on social media regarding the sexual assault allegations that had occurred, which and that's why they voted the way they did, which I respect their side of it, but I can tell you I will never ever apologize for sticking up.
Yeah, I don't think you should.
For
I don't
a
think you
group
should.
like
I think I guess if you're gonna lose, you know, lose by expressing your opinion.
Yeah,
you know, by speaking up.
If somebody's not gonna vote for me because they don't like the way that I refuse to let somebody who has harmed others buy on a free pass.
Mm-hmm.
I can sleep well at night with that.
Let me ask you a question, because there has been a push from Tim to remove Lisa Newsom as a superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
He's not got 1 second anytime he's made this motion.
Yeah.
Would you give him a second?
I think any time a board member brings something to the table, it should be seconded. A second doesn't mean that you're going to vote yes. A second
Right.
means that I respect you as a board member
To
enough
listen to what you have to say.
talk about, to discuss this. So absolutely. If everybody else is going to sit there, would I second it? Yes, absolutely. I would listen to what he has to say on why he wants it. That does not mean that I want to fire Lisa Newsom.
Right.
It does not mean
You just
that
want to have a conversation why he thinks she should be fired.
Yeah, like how are we in a position now where we don't even respect the board members enough to hear what they have to say? It doesn't matter if you like what they have to say, because guess what? 2,000 other people did. They voted for him.
What kind of position is that going to put the board in, or the school district for that matter, if somebody seconds it and let's say the vote does pass to remove her? I mean, I know there was a lot of chaos kind of whenever there was no superintendent,
Yeah.
or they were in the search of a superintendent. I know they were there was a possibility of the state taking over at that point.
Yeah.
So
and again, I'm not a proponent for firing Lisa Newsom. Like I want to make that clear. I think it's definitely something that should be talked about. I think Tim's point of view should be heard. Okay. So I'm not even elected yet, so I ain't firing nobody.
Right.
But if that's the case where you run into, I can tell you that the district right now is kind of low on people who would qualify for the position. You look at a lot of the exits we have, including Kelly Washington, including Dr. Perkins, and they had a superintendent license. So that superintendent license is not an easy. It's not easy to get candidates who have that, right? Like not a lot of people are going out to get that. But if that were the case, then they would have to fall over to the ODE, who would provide like an intern and that sort of thing. And a search would be like John Rubisich all over again. So when Dr. Potts resigned,
was there an interview process for the interim? Like how many people were running for interim?
I know that they had a couple. I don't know exactly how many. And they are supposed to interview these people. And then they're supposed to vote on them. And one of the things that the board does not do and has not done in the past 4 years, which I find detestable, is the fact that I call them shadow deals. They do shadow deals. So they will get a quorum. They were like, well, listen, we got 4. We don't need his opinion. That's awful. That is a terrible way to run a board. If you are not including all 5 of them, because that's how many are on the board, 5. If you're not including all 5 of them in every decision, you are basically telling all the people that voted for that person, your vote doesn't matter, your voice doesn't matter. That's crap. Like, you can't do that. So that's one of the things that to me has stuck out the most of anything that they've done in this last 4 years, is the fact that they find it acceptable to carry on business without the entire board because they don't like the way somebody has to say something. And that's stupid. The method, listen, if you cannot handle somebody raising their voice, if you cannot handle conflicts, that's not the position you should be in then.
Mm-hmm. So I noticed on the minutes for whenever Lisa Newsom was appointed superintendent. So they had an interview process of several candidates, and from my understanding, the interview process or the discussion portion of after the interviews was, I think Tim mentioned somewhere in the minutes, you can find it. It was I don't think it was this one here, but on the minutes for that month, whatever it was, Tim had mentioned that the discussion process was 16 minutes.
Yeah,
I think it is what it
that's
said.
what it was. It was 16 minutes.
So within 16 minutes after interviewing 3 candidates, they made a decision. Do you think that was people already had their minds made up at that
100%.
point? Yeah.
100%. So I
Because
could,
that's the only thing I can come to.
yeah,
you know?
16 minutes. I can't decide what shirt I'm wearing in 16 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it takes me 16 minutes to decide which way I'm taking to work.
Yeah.
So when you nailed it right on the head, I think 16 minutes showed that there was a pre-existing agenda that was going on. And they went in there and they said, all right, like everything else is a formality. This is where they're going. And it's a shame because number one, it shows that you don't really care. You don't care enough about the district to actually put in, you don't care enough about the district to put in the actual time and effort that is required to give a full, well thought decision. And it's also a shame for the people who get hired from that, because then there's always this overshadow, right?
Right.
And these people are in a lot of cases very, very capable and very, very without that they may have gotten where they were without all the extra and all the nonsense, right? So when you do that, you are discounting the public and you're discounting the person who benefits from it too, because they are always going to have that shadow over top of them, and the public doesn't believe that you actually care about your job.
And I think that's one of the things that Tim has mentioned as far as how fast that process went. I know he's talked about maybe some nepotism regarding that process, because he made an allegation one of the meetings that Laura Jones being on the board, Lisa Newsom's husband is apparently Laura Jones's first cousin. I don't know how accurate that is.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think that he would make the allegation if it's not true. I mean, because that's provable. Either he is or he isn't.
right. And it hasn't been denied either. And that's the weird thing to me, because I know personally, if you said something about me that's not true, I'm denying that immediately. I'm shutting that down immediately. And,
Right.
and the fact that it hasn't been denied is interesting.
Yeah, but that's provable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, okay, are they related or not?
Yeah.
You know, like, so you think that was kind of like, I'm not saying like, is that the case, but again, even we talked about like knowing somebody is not a bad thing,
Right.
or being even related to somebody is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, is that person qualified? But do you think maybe that's part of the reason the process went so fast? Or
Yeah.
But here's the crazy thing. So, people look at that and say, well, Laura Jones abstained from that objection, or from that that election, that those votes. She abstained.
Yeah. So and honestly, I think if you go back, and I got to double check this, but I think if you go back, and the reason why I say this is because I was at the meeting that she was at, that this happened. She did vote. She did vote, yes.
For
Lisa.
She didn't.
So she
didn't. She
I was
abstained.
I was at the meeting. She did.
She didn't.
So maybe she abstained afterwards, but that's how that went, and it was weird to me because that was a meeting that was chaotic.
She got appointed February 17th, so that would have been in March's meeting.
That would be March's minutes for an agenda.
Let's see, regular board. Here we go, and then let me pull up the minutes. Meeting, regular board agenda. Where are the minutes?
It's regular board minutes.
Yeah, I'm not. Where?
February.
Oh, there we go. All right, so let's switch this over so everybody can see this. Let's zoom in. All right, so let's go to the 17th, February 1st, 2nd. All right, so 15th, 17th. All right, motion was made by Ms. Jones, executive order. This is for the superintendent search. A motion was made by Mr. Nemi to employ Lisa Newsom. There was some discussion about it, and then we have a vote. and Miss Jones
Interesting. Yeah,
abstained.
that's interesting because yeah, that's an interesting because I was at this meeting, and I distinctly remember initially she had said that she was not going to vote
Uh,
at this meeting, and
so
and then at the end it got really chaotic, and yeah,
and but here's also, so obviously the discussion. Dr. Barrickman and Ms. Rapus indicated they are comfortable with Miss Newsom and the direction forward. And then Miss Jones stated that she did not need any more time to make a decision, but she not ultimately didn't make a decision because
yeah,
she abstained.
yeah. So she abstained, and maybe what I'm remembering, I guess, or misremembering, is her voting to adjourn the meeting. But I do remember the vote taking place. And I guess the question comes into is, should that candidate then, with such a close tie to should that board member with such a close tie to a candidate have taken part in any portion of the superintendent search?
I think that's a great question.
And I think that is one of the things that kind of is the overcast of here. And I want to tell you, when I was just talking about how it's a shame for the people who actually get hired through these things, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, because I don't I don't have any issue with Lisa Newsom at all. I think she's a very intelligent, smart, and capable superintendent. I think I've watched her work, right?
Mhm.
Like, I've watched her work, and I respect what she does. I respect her ability to get um, results, right? And that's why the way this whole process went was so disappointing, because it's like she was a very quality candidate to begin with, and then we've got this overshadow now of, well, you only got it because your cousin's on the board.
Right.
It's not fair to her, and it's not fair to the public either. Like, the whole thing should have been handled differently. And honestly, I think that's really where this lies, where with the constant asking for her termination and stuff like that, is because the process was faulty. And that's like, you really need to relook that process.
So you're willing to give Tim a second to relook at
To
the way-
relook at the way this works. Yeah.
Fair. I think that's fair.
Yeah. And like, that's what I said. Like, people get so tied into well, you want her fired. No, I don't. Like, first of all, I don't want to fire nobody.
Right.
Like, but do I think that you should respect a board member enough to second their motion, listen to what they have to say, make a discussion, and then go from there? Absolutely. Because that's what when you ran for this board, that's what you agreed to.
Right.
Like, at least follow up what you're doing. That's not what they do, though. They look at things that they don't want to hear. We have a president that gavels board members in the middle of them talking because he doesn't like what they have to say.
All right. So I've looked at some of that. And I don't agree with it, but I also agree that there are ways of doing things,
Mhm.
and if something's not done, the way outlined in code of conduct or policy, I think I think it's proper in in some points. Maybe if it's not done the way it should be, that a gavel be given.
Absolutely. Like I agree with you. If you are, when things are getting out of hand, it gets dirty, or you know what I mean, maybe it gets personal, those sort of things. At that point, sometimes you use the gavel to remind people, hey, it's a meeting, right? You don't use the gavel just to protect the reputation of your friends and family. That's not what that's for. And that's what it's being used for.
I was gonna ask, is that like, is that the way you perceive it?
Yes, yeah. So anytime any statement with a negative connotation comes up, it's order, or this is legal, or this is this, and it's not. Like, when things are when public record matters are being brought to the public, it's fair game. And that's what this whole the beginning of the meetings, and when they talk about old business and new business and that sort of thing, like, at that point you should be quiet, and you should listen to the board members who have things to say. Correspondence is a big one, because you have one board member, Tim Fleming, who has been served with, like, cease and desist letters and all these legal
Censures and
proceedings. And
yeah, I've seen
I'd
that.
never seen anything in my life like that. I didn't think this was real, that people would actually weaponize the legal system against somebody like this. It's
You know what?
unbelievable.
You know what I feel like reading through all this stuff and knowing, what I've learned even within the last week. I feel like if I were Tim Fleming, I'd feel like Donald Trump. Dead ass. And the reason I say that is because there are a lot of similarities. Trump, they try to censor and, he's got gag orders.
It's
and running
not-
as a candidate.
It's not different.
No,
It's not.
It's not different at all. But yeah, I kind of I see similarities in that aspect.
It's terrible. It's weaponizing. The censure is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life.
So let's get to that because he's been censored. And like you stated at the beginning of this podcast, there's so what are the repercussions of a censure
Nothing.
if you violate it? Because
Nothing.
they can't kick you off
No.
unless there's a recall.
No.
So what is the purpose of it at that point?
So the people who are annoyed with you feel better about themselves. That's the whole purpose. It does nothing other than they're trying to disgrace somebody that they've spent 4 years disgracing. Cool for you, because that it doesn't matter. It's not going to mean anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what it's the weaponization. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing. It's look how terrible he is. Look how terrible he never stops talking. He leaked information. He leaked executive information, which is weird because I've been at these public participation. I've gone to not every single meeting, but man, am I a regular attendant. I probably missed 3 or 4 meetings in the last 3 years. I've gone to these and I've seen where public participation has come. People have gone up there and talked, and in their rants against either Tim or the board or the school, have referenced stuff that there was no way for them to know. There was no way for them to know that information. Where that came from, I don't know. I'm not the CIA.
Right.
But I know that when that information had to come from somewhere, but you're going to censure somebody. Come on, man. Like you're doing the same thing. It's do as I say, not as I do. And that's the culture right now. You know what I mean? And a lot of this is literally just retaliation. It's retaliation because one person stood up against somebody that nobody felt that anybody could stand up to. So it's amazing. And that's why
game.
To kind of, I guess, put a bow on this, right? That's why I want to get on there, because we have developed a culture on the board that is unpleasant, it's detestable, and it is harmful, I believe, to the district. I think the district looks awful because we have a board that can't function within each other. Because of their refusal to work. So you can't have that. Like if you're on that board for anything other than for the kids, you're failing your position. Like it's a political position only in that it's elected, but you can't be there to prop up people within your circle.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I like your stance on, if somebody has an issue, let them talk about it. Yeah.
That's the whole point. There's a reason why we have a school board and not a school president or a school king or a school czar.
Right.
Because we need 5 different
diversity of thought.
Yeah.
See, and that's where I agree. Diversity, right?
Yes.
Diversity of thought.
Yes. And that's the whole point of diversity, equity, and inclusion is because if you're only getting one flavor every single time, you're not getting a great ending. You're just never going to. So, right. I mean, diversity, equity, and inclusion is more than skin color, but skin color is also a huge part of it, right? For anybody to look, at people and just say, well, that nobody looks at skin color anymore. That's not true. That's not true. Like, it's not as a pressing issue as it was maybe in the 80s or the 70s, but it's still very much an issue. And it's something that you need to acknowledge, that there are differences, not just in skin color, but in culture.
Right.
And each culture should be represented.
Agree. Well, Sam, anything else you want to go over before we End it.
That's pretty much it for me. You know what I mean? This year, for the first time ever in the district's history, we have a chance to vote for change, for kids who desperately need it. Desperately need this change. Um, my name is Sam Torres. I'm hoping I can, get your vote. I believe that Tim Fleming and Darius Williams are also agents for change. So I would hope that you would give them a chance as well and vote for us three, so we can help this district move forward in a positive direction. It's going to take some time, but like I've said before, time is not something I'm taking for granted. It's something I want to start working on immediately, whatever that means, whether that means talking to teachers, parapros, superintendents, families directly, whatever we got to do to get this district to be the best. Our district should look the way our facilities do, or our district should work the way our facilities look, and that is the best in the county.
Agree. Well, I am Anthony Oquindo, and on behalf of myself and Tom, who had to take off early, we appreciate you coming in, Sam. Wish you the best of luck in your candidacy, and yeah, I mean, we're still gonna be cool.
That's it, baby. Thanks
All right,
so much.
thank you. See you later.